you just have to start somewhere. And once you start and you have something good to bring to the world, which I believe everyone does, then YouTube, the algorithms, everything will work for you, because if you're trying to put good out into the world, I think good will come back to you. So.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are and wherever you're watching from. My name is Matt Pierce, host of the Visual Lounge, where we talk about using images and video, mostly in the workplace. But today we're going to go outside of that. We're going to talk about and with someone who has been very successful at something that we never talked about on the show before, and I'm super excited to be able to talk about. She is a creator for YouTube focused on food and cooking and all these amazing things. And we happened to connect with her at Vid Summit, this awesome show about creating and using YouTube as a creator to grow your business. And so we're going to talk to her. And this is going to be so good. So we're just going to dive in with our introduction. So let me introduce to you to Lisa Childs. Lisa Childs is a YouTuber, food blogger, and cookbook author. She started her website, triedtestedandtrue.com, and YouTube channel in 2019. In February 2020, Lisa was named YouTube's Creator on the Rise, and she is now a full-time video creator. In 2021, she published her first officially licensed Instapot cookbook with Simon & Schuster. It's called I Love My Instapot, Cooking for One. Lisa and her team of employees love to help their readers have confidence and joy in the kitchen. Lisa loves to eat ice cream, watercolor, I should have looked up how to say this, gouache paint, nap, listen to podcasts, volunteer, and travel to find delicious foods. She resides in Salt Lake City, Utah with her two amazing children and her husband, Brett. And with that, we'd like to welcome Lisa to the Visual Lounge. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Matt. Good morning. And thank you for having me on the podcast.
You bet. Thank you so much for joining us. We were so pleased, as we were talking before that, just to be able to connect with you at Vid Summit. And for full disclosure, we had a contest that was at Vid Summit, and Lisa was a winner of a great camera, and hopefully she'll get lots of use out of it as she makes more videos.
Yes, thank you so much.
So, Lisa, as we get started here, let's just kind of dive into a few questions. So, and then we'll get to kind of about a little bit more about you. But first thing, what would you say is one tip you would give everybody to help them if they're looking to create videos, get better at creating videos? What's one tip you would say, like, here's how you can do it? Obviously, there's a million things you need to do, but what's one thing?
Yes, and especially for aspiring creators and for people who are just beginning, it is so easy to just get lost in the weeds of, well, I need this camera and I need this mic, and my script's not quite right and my editing is not perfect. But honestly, the number one tip that I give every single person that comes to me who wants to start using video or wants to start using YouTube for their business is you have to just start. I know people who are making buckets of money and are so successful, and their videos are filmed on Android phones. Like, it doesn't matter, like, your equipment or your setup. You just have to start. And if you know that you're bringing some value to your audience, then the success will come and you can upgrade and you can change those things later on. But you have to start somewhere. And the first couple of videos, they're not going to be great. You're going to look back and cringe a little bit on every past video, but that's kind of the point. You have to get better and better, and you're never going to get better if you don't start.
Perfect advice. I'm pretty sure I've given that same advice because it's so valuable, right? Like, because if you don't start, you can never get better. You can never improve. So let's talk about your start, because, like I mentioned at the top of the show, we've never had someone who is a creator and focused on food and cooking and the kitchen. And I mean, those are amazing things. And I've watched your videos, and they're so good and you do such a good job. So, but I'm guessing you weren't born a cook. You weren't born creating cooking videos. So where did you start, and how did you start to learn about video and making video?
I actually have loved food and cooking for my entire life. I recall when I was in elementary school, I would watch the Food Network and Cooking Channel, like, instead of watching cartoons, and I was always in the kitchen, like, just mixing up ingredients. I'm sure it was disgusting, and it was just crazy. But my mom offered me that freedom to just experiment in the kitchen, and that's something that I've been doing since I was a little girl. But as far as videos go, It's just kind of gradual, right? With the internet, like first we were all posting on Facebook, our 60 photo album or 60 photo max limit albums on Facebook. And then when Instagram came around, it was, single photos with the filters. And then eventually there was like a little video function on Instagram. And as creators, we always have to adapt, and that's kind of one of the biggest complaints about the internet is people say, oh, it's always changing and it's so frustrating. But that's kind of the excitement for me, is like things are changing and you always have to learn and adapt. It's always going to be moving, and if you don't catch on and get with it and just try and learn and adapt, you'll get left behind. And so for me, it was kind of just out of necessity. I saw that video was the way that things were going online, and I had a good friend who was a YouTube creator just reach out to me and say, hey, I saw that you're making these videos and you're posting them on Instagram and you're posting them on your website, but you need to get them on YouTube. That is like where you're going to hit the most people and it's going to help more people, so just start putting them on YouTube. And I was a little bit nervous for sure, because at the time, maybe 5, 6 years ago, I was like, oh, I don't know, the only people on YouTube are like these big, loud, obnoxious creators, and I just don't feel like that's me. And she said, just be who you are, be yourself, and help people, and the audience will come.
Yeah. Well, I love that. As I was as preparing for today, and I was reading on your website a little bit about you, I saw that you started off corporate wise as a technical writer, and I often think about the relationship. I know it's, and I'm weird, so that's why it's often I think about these things. But like the technical writer and cooking
Mm-hmm.
are it's process, it's instructional.
Mm-hmm.
And so do you feel like that's something that has guided or helped you as you've moved that transition from a corporate technical writer into this creator who's teaching people about cooking and food?
Oh, absolutely, like 100%. Because in my work as a technical writer and a documentation specialist, our job was to kind of make software that had the potential to be confusing or could be highly technical, and pare it down to make it make sense to the lowest level learner. And as a recipe creator, that's exactly what I'm doing. um, and there's an art to doing it, where you need to be technical and also simple, not condescending, but not too simple, but also thorough. And so everything that I learned in that job helps me every single day. Um, just the technical aspects of just process writing, and the semantics of how you write things properly, and just it's basically just helping people in the very best and most clear way. So it's definitely been my greatest asset in my current career, doing all that technical writing for several years.
Yeah. So I love that transition. I can see that coming together. And you talked about, you were already making videos for like Instagram and stuff, kind of that progression you went through, right? I'm curious, do you happen to remember the first time you put camera, maybe this is a weird way to say it, but put camera to food and said like, oh, I can teach somebody how to do this, or I can show somebody something that's going to be helpful, because I do think that's such a key piece to being successful on YouTube or the other platforms, right? Is making sure it's usable. Something I like. It's fun to look at stuff, but it's more fun, I think, for me to go and read and learn about the process. And so, do you remember what the first thing is that you did?
That's a really good question. Let's see. Honestly, I was just posting like my personal recipes, what I was making for dinner on my personal social media. And that's kind of what got me into where I am now. Ever since, social media kind of started taking off right about the time when I got married. And so I was posting what I was making for my husband and I. It's just very, simple things, but I finally had like some freedom and some room in our small apartment versus living with roommates, so where I could experiment and I could cook things. So I was just posting what we were eating for dinner. And then several years down the line, after I got my first Instant Pot, and Instant Pot was fairly new at the time, there were not very many resources on the internet about how to use an Instant Pot, even recipes. And so it was really confusing for people because there's definitely a learning curve when it comes to using an electric pressure cooker. It's not something that, people in, it's not a super modern, it's an old fashioned way of cooking, but it's like modernized
Mm-hmm.
with the electric version. And so it's just something that requires a learning curve. So I was posting some photos and videos and stories about how I was making certain dishes in my Instant Pot. And that was what was getting the most traction from just my personal friends and family. And people were calling me and messaging me. And these were people that I wasn't even super close with. So I was like, okay, lots of people are asking me about this. Maybe I should start sharing it on a public platform. So that's when I started my Instagram account. Instant Pot Cooking is what it was called in 2016. I just started it, and I did not think anything of it. I forgot about it for a couple weeks, and then I opened it again, and there were like 53 followers or something like that, and I was ecstatic because these were all people I didn't know.
Yeah.
And in 2016, that is like, oh my gosh, like there's people on the internet that want to know what I'm doing, and I don't know any of them, which is bizarre. And so I was just posting videos, and stories were kind of new at the time as well. So I was just posting stories of what I was making in my Instant Pot, and it just kept rolling and rolling and rolling, and it turned into kind of a big account. And that's when I transitioned from just Instagram to my website, and then my YouTube channel after that.
Yeah, that's awesome. But I can, again, it would just drawing back to that technical writer. Like, here's an item. It has an interface that instructions are sometimes at best unclear, right? Because
Yes.
I've used one, and I think it's probably a lot of people have, and it's often wondering, do I hit this button? Do I hit it twice? Do I hit it? So I can
Yep.
see how that the ability to translate kind of the tech speak into the kind of the common language would be super powerful. So, obviously as creators, I think everyone wants to grow. They want, you want to see 53 new subscribers. You want to get to 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, and you want to go through this process. As you've gone through that, what have you found to be challenging, or are there challenges that are different from being a small, just I'm going to do this because people are asking me lots of questions, to now that is, the pressure of like, well, you're over 100,000. Now what, right? Like, do you find that it's a different level of like of what you have to focus on, or things have changed as a creator for you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a struggle every single day. And unless you're Mr. Beast, I don't know of anyone who's like, oh, I'm just thrilled. Like, I'm just so happy with how things are going. Like, I'm good if everything stops tomorrow. As creators, I think we all have this innate kind of drive for more and to want more. And when you're a beginner creator, I think it's pretty exciting because you're hungry for it. Like, and you have to get to a certain threshold in order to start monetizing your content. And so that's like a very obvious and clear benchmark for creators to try and get to. And so you're working for every single page view. You're working for every single view. You're advertising yourself. You're putting yourself out there, and you really have to market yourself because, you're unknown. And so I think there's kind of something exciting about that stage because you are so just like excited and hungry for it. And it's hard because, especially when you're not making any money, it's like, you have to make this work.
Right.
Whereas when you become a little bit bigger and there's more of a steady income, and it's a little bit easier to become complacent or to start complaining about things that are out of your control. There's definitely things, everyone can work on so many gazillion different things. Um, and every single one of those things are important in the long term. So I think it's important to just narrow your focus on maybe one or two things where you're like, okay, I really want to work on improving this in my next video, whether that's audio, whether that's production value, whether that's the editing or the flow or the topic or the thumbnail. There's so many different things that we can put our focus on as creators. So for me, it's always changing. And after going to a conference like Vid Summit, I actually have my notebook right here. I have like three different lists. So the first list are action items. It's like completely separate from like the notes I'm taking. So I'm taking notes during sessions, but there's an action item list where I'm like, okay, that's something I have to do when I get home. The second list I have is just content ideas. So, oh, I heard something during one of the sessions that sparked an idea for me of, how I can apply that to one of my videos, like topic wise or transition wise. Okay, this is an idea that I want to do. This is a video title or whatever it is. And then the last list is just, you know, the main highlights, the notes, the little gems from the speakers. So there's just always different ways that you can improve, but those are just some of the ways that I am trying to always improve and focus on.
Yeah, I love that, and I love that you've broken it up in those lists so that it makes it easier for you to go through and kind of figure out what it is you're going to actually do. Because I think any event, right? It's hard to know or remember because there's just so much information. One of the
Yes.
things I'm curious about here is we just actually had a session we did with Nick Nimmin. You might. I don't know if you know Nick's work. He does a lot about creating YouTube. We're talking about time management, and one of the things I'm curious about for you as you've grown, do you have you systematized your videos? Is every video a unique kind of beautiful creation that's going to be unique on its own way, or as you've grown, do you think about things like how to use templates or kind of structures over and like repeatable pieces? Not that you're doing each piece like I'm pulling this piece from, it's going to be in every single video, but like are you thinking about from like, because obviously if there's pressure to create and release every day or once a week, that's a lot. And I got to imagine, and maybe we'll be able to talk about this, but food videos, I've got to imagine take time because food
Yes.
takes time. Cooking is not, it's not as much as they call it an Instapot, it's not instant, right? Like, so how are you breaking up the work that you do to make sure that you can be consistent in your publishing schedule, that it isn't overwhelming to recreate? I got to imagine if you're trying to recreate a video, I can't do it. That's why I have a structure for the show. So I'm curious your thoughts on how you do that and what advice you'd give to others to help them to do that.
Right. Well, absolutely. You have to have a system, you have to have a schedule. And early on in my videos, I was really, really hyper focused on getting everything perfect. Like it would take me 2 hours to set up my cameras and to get ready. And I had a script written out. And what I found with those videos is the ROI was just not there.
Mm-hmm.
They were performing, but when you spend 5 hours just preparing and shooting one part of a recipe and then you need to put 5 recipes in a video, that's just not sustainable, especially because in the beginning at the time I was editing all my own content, and I can edit videos. I'm decent at it, but I'm not a professional editor. And so it would take, and a little bit of a perfectionist when it comes to your own content. It's very vulnerable to put yourself out there. So you want everything to look really nice. Um, I was, taking 12 to 20 hours to just edit one video. It's
Oh
like,
yeah.
I cannot sustain this long term if I want to be consistent. And what I tell anyone who comes to me and says that they want to start a channel is you have to figure out a way to be able to scale and to sustain whatever schedule you're going for. So instead of doing 5 videos in 1 week and then no videos for 2 months because you're so burned out and you're so tired and you just are so overwhelmed, make it so you're doing 5 videos once a week, or not 5 videos a week, one video a week for 5 weeks. That is so much better than just these clumps and spurts of productivity, because consistency is always going to be better than like anything else, especially on YouTube. So some of the things that I did were I I simplified my filming setup. So before I was using 2 DSLR cameras, I had a big lighting setup, and I realized after doing some analysis on my channel and kind of looking at who my viewers were, what they were saying in the comments, that I didn't need that production value in order to connect with the audience and to give them what I
Mm.
wanted. A lot of my friends who were these big creators and they were doing multiple videos a week, I was just like, how are you doing this? Because it's taking me hours to just set up. And they said, oh, no, you don't need that setup. I do my videos on a phone. I bought like this cheap mic, and like I'm just like pumping out videos, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, if they can do it, I can do it too, because I have value that I can give. It doesn't need to look perfect. So I changed my camera. I invested a little bit more in better audio, so it would kind of make up for that camera, that change in like the camera quality that I
Mm-hmm.
was looking for. And I just made it so I could just record a lot quicker. I stopped glamming, like spending an hour getting ready for each of the videos. And I just said, you know what? It's okay. If people like me, they'll watch me if I look like I always do anyway. Um, Especially because at the time both of my kids were babies, and it was just so difficult. I was recording after they went to bed, so this is like at 10 o'clock at night after I got everything set up, got my makeup on, got ready. It was just not sustainable. So now I have a much healthier schedule. I have systems in place where I plan out my content, and I have dedicated days for filming, and it's just a lot less stress.
Yeah. And that's part of it, right? Like there's just a lot of pressure to be a creator, especially when you've reached a certain level. I think there's an expectation, and yeah. But I love what you're saying about you can shoot with an iPhone, you can shoot with lower quality stuff because it's about personality. It's about good content. It's about, is it helpful? And so I do really love that. Along your journey, I'm curious because it seems like you've actually gotten to a lot of success fairly quickly. I know I talked to a lot of creators, and they'll tell you about when they were starting back 10 years ago, and they were lucky to get one or two viewers, and then they've grown, and then
Yep.
you get like a
Yeah.
Sean Cannell who's at like 2 million viewers or what, or 2 million subscribers. What was the aha moment that you knew things were going well, that you're like, oh, this is really going someplace? I mean, you talked about the 53 people on the Instagram that were not people that you knew. Was there, like, particularly on YouTube, was there a moment that you're like, oh gosh, this is real, this is happening?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I kind of constantly am waiting for that moment. Even though, I am so grateful, and I'm so, I've been blessed to be able to um make this a career that can sustain my family. And um I mean, the first several years I did not make like hardly any money doing any of this. And so it's kind of hard now to look back and be like, well, why are you saying you're struggling? Why is it a struggle if you're like making money and like you're doing this for a job, you have a team? It's like, because there's always something to be bettered, and there's always something that can improve. Um, as far as a certain moment, oh, that's a really good question. Actually, I think that was probably at the beginning of this year. So 2023 has been a really good year. In 2022, my whole goal was to kind of transition my strategy from, because I have my website, and I have my cookbooks, and I have social media, and I have YouTube. I really wanted to make YouTube my primary focus, and to make that a sustainable um, main part of my revenue
Mm-hmm.
streams for the business. And in 2022, I was kind of laying down um, all the necessary steps in order to make that happen. And so 2023, I think, has really kind of gotten um, in a good place. So very beginning of this year in January, I had several videos right after Christmas, because I really strategized at the end of the year, and I was like, hey, I did a ton of research to make sure that December and January were going to go well. And you can plan all you want, but anyone will tell you, oh my gosh, I thought this video was going to be a massive hit, and then it's like a 9 out of 10, or like, it's just, it doesn't perform as well as you think it does. And then there are some videos where you just kind of, they're fine, and then they like take off.
Yeah.
But at the end of last year, beginning of this year, I had a couple videos kind of back to back just do really, really well. And I was like, okay, my research like really paid off, and I made more in those 2 months than I did in like the several couple of years prior to that, almost combined. And I was like, okay, this is like possible. Like this is possible to um I don't know, to hit that level of some kind. And now I'm just kind of chasing after that again. And like, I'm doing the research, I'm putting in the work and the time in order to just try and plan and create the best content that I can. Because obviously, it's highs and it's lows and it's highs and it's lows. But the main goal is to it's like just up and to the right eventually. Um, but there's always lows. People always see the highs and the peaks, but what I always focus on are the lows, because that's what I live in and day out. And I'm like, okay, how can I get to those highs, and um, how can I replicate that success?
Yeah, well, I love it. And I want to pull out for our audience that's listening that the reality here is that you have to, it's work, right? Like, I love that you're talking about the planning, because I think so often, and it's like, well, I can just turn on my camera and I can talk. Well, you can, but that's not what was successful. It's understanding the market, it's understanding the audience, and doing that research. And I think what a great lesson for us to take away is that you have to put in the effort up front. It's not even necessarily, that's not even about the video. It's not about the camera. It's not about the audio. It's just what is it that's going to resonate, and understanding that audience. So thank you for that. I really appreciate that. We'll go, I want to get to speed round question here, but I do want to ask you. So one of the things that you shared with us, and I was really grateful for this, is that you actually started your journey of as video editing. And now I understand that this is not your current workflow, but because you have a team that you work with, which is super cool to see that you've gotten to that point. But you actually started your video editing process with Camtasia.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's really cool. So tell us a little bit about, like, how did you find it, and why was that something that you used early on?
Yeah, so I was working as a technical writer for about 4 years before I kind of got into all of this world. And during that job, I was in charge of making our video tutorials. So every single week we had a product release. And so I was in charge of making the videos, highlighting the changes in the UI, explaining the new features, and making a video for all of our users to kind of just see what was happening that week. So I had a lot of experience using Camtasia in a very simple, you know, workflow, because we were just doing screen recordings and voiceovers, but it was it was manageable for us on our team. Like, we didn't need anything super crazy. We're not editing like a feature film.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just extremely simple, extremely easy to use, very approachable. And so I got really comfortable using Camtasia at work. And so when I left that job, it was just very obvious to me that I was just going to purchase, a home license for myself. And I spent so much time in Camtasia. Like I said, I spent so many hours editing videos at the beginning of this whole YouTube journey. And it's an amazing tool for people who are just starting out. It's affordable, but it's very high quality, and there are some features that I just really loved about it. So it was just really good to have that background experience, and then to be able to use it in a different way, because now I'm adding footage, and we're adding a little bit more effects. And I just have a soft spot in my heart for Camtasia, because that's where it all started.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that, because it's funny, just thinking about your journey through that, and we so appreciate when people get started. Even we know sometimes people go on to grow into other tools and with the team and things like that. And but it's cool to see that you got your start with us. So
Yes.
we appreciate that. All right, Lisa, we're going to jump into our speed round questions. If you're new to the podcast, speed round questions are quick questions. Answered I guess they're quickly asked and quickly answered. So let's
Okay.
go. We'll play the stinger now. The dice cam is down for this one, but that's okay. We've still got some great questions for you, Lisa. Okay, Lisa, you mentioned that you started off watching Food Network as a kid, right? Who is your favorite Food Network chef?
You know, there's so many good ones, but I have to just go back to Emerald Lagasse because he just
Mm.
had the bam, the just the excitement and the passion for cooking. Like it was just inspiring to watch. But obviously, I love them all. Bobby Flay and Ina Garten and um, Sandra Lee, Rachel Ray. They're all just fantastic. Those are like the OG Food Network stars.
Yeah. I'm an Alton Brown man myself, but
Oh, I love Alton Brown too. Oh my gosh,
absolutely.
definitely him.
Okay, so I know in the world of YouTube, particularly, there are I mean there's so many food focused channels, and I mean it's very competitive, of course, like in that way. But in YouTube, we're all friends and family. If you could go and cook a meal and get to eat that meal with anyone that's a YouTube creator that also is the kind of the food kitchen space, who would you recommend? Who would you want to go sit down and have a meal with?
Oh man, that is such a good question. There is a creator. His name is his channel name is Pro Home Cooks, and all of a sudden I can't remember his name, but he is so just smart and just so intelligent, and I love his style, and I would just love to just go sit down with him in his studio, talk to him about YouTube and food and cooking and um, all the things. Like I love his sourdough recipe. I have a video on his sourdough recipe on my channel, so I would love to sit down with Pro Home Cooks. And now I can't remember his name all of a sudden, though.
Is
So
it
I'm
Mike
sorry.
Greenfield?
I think so. That
Okay.
sounds right. I think his
I,
name's
I,
Mike.
I
Yep.
Googled it. So that's,
Okay.
I
Yes,
didn't
that's
know.
him.
I'll have to check it out. Yeah. I mean, so I think that, I mean, what a great experience that would be. Like how fun that would be because there's so many interesting people. And I love, like the thing I love about YouTube creators and creators in general is just the willingness to share and to talk. So
Yes.
if Mike by some chance Pro Home Cooks is watching this or finds out of this, let's see if we can get you guys together to break some sourdough bread together.
That would be amazing. Yes. And I will just say, sorry, I know this is a quick
Yeah.
round, but
No.
I have never met a creator, no matter how massively huge they are or if they're just beginning, I've never met a YouTuber who's not willing to just help in some way or go the extra mile to help another creator. Like if I have questions about something or if I need a reference for, you know, a printer for my cookbook or anything like that, I have always been able to go to any creator, no matter how huge they are, and ask for some help, and they are 100% willing to help me. And I think that's something that is so beautiful that I found in this community is just the community aspect of it. Like, there's not very many YouTubers in my neighborhood, but I know I can go um, just go somewhere on YouTube or on Instagram and find someone, reach out, and like everyone is so generous, and that's something that I really try and just pass it along and help someone else because I wouldn't be where I am without just the generosity and the expertise and knowledge and help from others.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And for the record, Lisa, there are no YouTubers in my neighborhood. I get about as close as it is. So that's awesome. Okay, I'm really torn. I've got one more question, and I've got two in mind, and so I'm gonna put them both forward, and
Okay.
you can determine which one you're gonna answer. So I was watching one of your videos, and you were talking about soup and how good your soups are. Like you claim to be a master at soups, right? I don't know if master is the
Yeah.
right word, but you're really good at soup. So one question is, what's your favorite soup to eat and to make? But the other one is, you built this your brand on the start of like the electric pressure cookers, Instapots, things like that. And I'm curious because I know how hard sometimes it is to keep them clean, to wash them continuously. And I'm wondering how many electric pressure cookers do you have? So you can choose which question are you going to answer, but I'm curious about both.
Well, I can answer both really quickly. So the first question, I had like 10 or 12. I don't know. My husband built me an Instant Pot shelf in the garage because I had so many. But I literally just got rid of almost like half of them because I had a lot that I bought when I was developing my first cookbook. And they just sat in the garage. So I gave a bunch away to my friends and I sold some. So now I only have like maybe 3 or 4. It's just like a manageable amount. So just a couple now. As far as the soups, yes, I think I'm really good at soups because a lot of times I see people make soup and it's just like vegetables floating in like clear broth. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's no flavor, there's no love, like there's no layering of um the flavors. And so I am really passionate about my soup recipes because they're like my pride and joy. I think they're just excellent. So my favorite one to make is my homemade chicken noodle soup recipe with homemade egg noodles. It's a
Mm-hmm.
tiny bit of a labor of love, but it is the best chicken noodle soup recipe. I've gotten so many comments and just reviews from my generous readers who are so kind. That have said, this is like the best recipe I've ever made. And for something as iconic as chicken noodle soup, I find that to be like a huge compliment because everyone has their own, spin and everyone has their own way of making chicken noodle soup. But it's definitely my favorite because it's so, so good. And I've just shared this experience in this recipe with so many people. And so I feel like I'm very connected to that recipe. Um, so that's my favorite one to make. My favorite one to eat, honestly, it's just my egg drop soup recipe. I make that one multiple times a month because I always have the ingredients on hand. I don't have to measure anything. It's extremely soothing, especially when I'm sick and in the winter when it's cold. Like right
Mm-hmm.
now, I've had it multiple times this week. It's just super simple. I can get it done in 10 minutes and it's delicious, packed with protein. It's healthy. It's so good. So those are my favorites.
I love those answers, and I love that there's still 3 to 4 electric pressure cookers in your home.
Yeah. Sorry,
That's
that wasn't a quick answer, but
no, it's great. I love it, and I'll just for the record, that is 2 to 3 more than I have in my home. So I think we have one. But well, Lisa, this has been just I've so thoroughly enjoyed talking with you about your journey, about your advice for us as creators, and about food. It's lunchtime where I am, so I'm hungry now, of course. But before we go, one thing: if people are interested in learning more, they want to get recipes from you, they want to connect with you, where should they go?
oh, amazing. Thank you. So they can find me on Instagram at tried.tested.true. It's a little bit of a mouthful, I know. And then also on YouTube, my channel is Tried, Tested, and True. And you can also find my website, which is triedtestedandtrue.com, where you can find all of my recipes and also order my new cookbook, which is going to be shipping at the end of this month. It's over 100 instant pot recipes all in one amazing resource. I also have another cookbook that you can purchase anywhere books are sold: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, online. And that one's 175 instant pot recipes for one. So they're all single serving recipes.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, guys, go check those links out. Go find it. We'll put them in the description and the doobly doo down below. So,
Thanks,
Lisa,
Matt.
before we go, we always like to ask our guests for their final take. So, I'm curious, after all this conversation, things we've talked about, what would you say is your final take?
I think that the final take from this conversation is that um, you just have to start somewhere. And once you start and you have something good to bring to the world, which I believe everyone does, then YouTube, the algorithms, everything will work for you because if you're trying to put good out into the world, I think good will come back to you. So that's my final take.
Fantastic. Well, Lisa, thank you so much. It's been such a honor and a wonderful joy just to talk to you.
Oh, thank you so, Matt. The honor was mine.
Oh, thank you. All right, everybody, you heard it from Lisa. Go get started. If you haven't started, get started. If you're already in the process, take time to figure out what's going to get you better. I love her story about just taking time to research and figure out what's going to get her to that next level. And that's the kind of work that goes in consistently. Whether you're making videos for yourself as a creator, even if you're working for an organization, take that time. We say this all the time on the show at the end of every single show, right? Like, we take time to get better. Now, of course, if you've got things that you want to give us help, you want to help us to get better, leave us comments in below. Make sure you subscribe so you never miss one of our episodes. Or you can email us at thevisuallounge@techsmith.com because we love to hear. Is there someone you want to see? Is there questions you want us to ask? Is there something that we should be talking about that help you to get better? We're there for you. We want to help you on this journey. So whatever it is you're doing, we hope you take a little bit of time to level up every single day. Thanks, everybody.